I'm pretty sure my 8th grade or my middle school may have been sort of ahead of its time, dude, playing It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to
Well, I
Yesterday
think
over the intercom.
Attention students, we know this is the last day of school and we just wanted to play something special for you, so please enjoy this song.
How do I say goodbye?
I think we had the same thing, but mainly because I knew that I would be going to a Christian school the next year, so it was pretty sad. Pretty sad.
They play different songs over the intercom there, huh?
Yeah.
When the roll is called up yonder.
The old rugged cross.
Hey, all you half-elves and barbarians. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad. A podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. We are your hosts, Woody Brown.
And Tyler Bence. How's it going?
What is up, brother?
Just hanging out.
You sound real sleepy.
I'm not sleepy. It's just, well,
you kind of sound like you just woke up. For me.
My family's out of town. Typically, well, at least lately.
Story's already too long.
No, lately it's been me watching the girls while my wife's had to go
Already too long.
handle that business, work. And so for these last couple of days, it's been old T-Bird by himself. And I've slept late every day. I've stayed
Watch
up.
scary movies all night long.
I did start the new Nightmare on Elm Street, which
I haven't seen it yet.
we'll talk about it later.
Maybe a different
I haven't finished it,
show.
but
Okay.
a couple things though. I finally got around to finishing Shadow and Bone,
Ooh, yes.
and man, it's pretty awesome.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, dude.
I loved it, dude.
Honestly, though, I think because I was like drawing, the first 2 episodes felt so slow to me, and I felt like I just missed so much that
Yeah. You need to go back.
I totally went back and just restarted from the top, and man, it's awesome. And I'm praying that they're going to keep going. Do you know
Yeah, me
anything about
too.
it?
Yeah, I mean, one of our friends the other night basically said that he had heard that they canceled it. But I looked that up, and I'm calling BS on it. So I fact-checked that, son. And it looks like it's going to get renewed for a second season, hopefully. And if you haven't seen it yet, we're talking about a Netflix original called Shadow and Bone. It's based on a trilogy of books, but there apparently are even more books that kind of talk about other characters and stuff.
Yeah.
And initially I was kind of nervous to watch the show because like the books themselves are like, I think they're like young adult novels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so exactly, man. When you watch the show, you don't feel that, right? I mean, they did a good job. I haven't read the books yet, but they do a good job of making it like a cool show that adults will like, and it's not for teens or whatever. But yeah, okay. You took a breath like you were going to say something, like you were going to interrupt.
No, I was trying to be cough. I was like,
I was trying to be cough.
I was trying to be quiet while I cough.
See what I'm saying? You sound sleepy.
Oh man, it's early.
Chug that Red Bull, dude.
I'm on my second one already.
Holy moly.
Hey, one thing that was weird about it, did you notice that like at the beginning of every episode, it would say, like violence, whatever, and then it would say nudity, but like, I don't think there was any nudity.
I didn't see any nudity. I mean,
Yeah, there wasn't really anything. But like almost on every episode, it says nudity, so that was weird.
yeah, I don't know.
didn't understand that.
Didn't notice anything, dude. I gotta tell you, man. Over the weekend.
Oh, we're just moving on the Shadow and Bone.
Well, a couple things. First off, well,
You're pulling on old Tyler there.
you're asleep, and I'm just now it's coming through, and it's like affecting me now.
I'm just
Now
waking
my
up.
mind is
You're
working
getting
slower.
ready for. It's 10 o'clock. You're getting ready for
Yeah,
bed.
it's almost bedtime. I've been up for 12 hours. No, over the weekend, my son had his first piano recital. Now, he is 8 going on 9. I myself, and well, I don't know if he's a child prodigy, but I myself around his age, also did my first piano recital, and I'll never forget it. And it's just so funny because, as you know, being around both my kids, you know, he and I are so much like we're just so different. Like when I was his age, man, I was always kind of just like wanting attention and just like doing silly things to like make girls laugh and all this kind of stuff. And he is very much the opposite of that. He doesn't want a whole lot of attention. He's a lot like my brother, where that kind of stuff just doesn't interest him, and he's just kind of like he shies away from it.
I mean,
And,
is he your brother's?
No, no, but my brother and I kind of joke that, you know, one of his sons basically acts just like me.
Oh,
And then,
that's
of course,
awesome.
my son acts just like him. And so we kind of joke about the fact that we're raising each other. But, you know, before we get there, my son asks Ann and I, he goes, hey, I mean, how many people am I going to be playing in front of? And we're like, I mean, I don't know. I imagine, you know, the kids that belong to that studio, because it's kind of like a music and dance studio, and then their parents, you know. And
So
he's
probably like thousands.
yeah, no. He's like, oh, okay. So we pull up into this church, and it's in this sanctuary, and I can just see him like getting more and more tense, right? And he's looking sharp as a tack. He's got a little bow tie on. He's just,
hell yeah.
you know, he's just ready to rock and roll. Well, we go in there and we go into the auditorium. There's all these people sitting in the pews. You know, the piano's up on this stage. It's, you know, on a riser basically. And he just like grabs my hand. He's like, hey Dad, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not good. I don't want to play piano ever again. You know, he went literally from like 0 to 60 in like a millisecond. And I'm like, what? I mean, like, I'm kind of taken aback because I can't believe, like, you know, I mean, for the lack of a better way to describe it, like this negativity that's coming out of his mouth and this like quitter's attitude. And so like I take him aside, and at first, like, nothing that I'm saying, he's just like, just immediate rebuttal, like, no, I'm not good. I'm not, you know, I don't want to do this. I can't do this, yada, yada, yada. So then I was like, okay, son, do you think that I got nervous before I would, you know, when I was in the band and before I went on stage and sang in front of, you know, hundreds of people and then later thousands of people? And he was like, no. And then I said, do you think I got nervous before I, you know, speak in front of an audience or anything now? And he's like, no. And I said, well, here's the thing. Actually, before I go on stage or before I do like any public speaking or anything like that, you know, I do have a little bit of nerves. There's always like this, you know, nervous feeling. But what I did back then, you'll remember this, dude, is before we would go on stage, every single night we were on tour, I would call my mom, I would call my dad, and I would call Ann. And something about like hearing their voices always kind of like anchored me to home in a way. And it would make me feel like, oh, I wasn't that far, you know, from them. And it would always just make me like feel like super pumped up. But also my dad would say every single night, like literally if we were playing every night in a row, my dad never failed. He would say this to me. He would say, okay, like right before I was, you know, wrapping up the conversation, he would say, son, I want you to go out there. I want you to give it 110%. I don't want you to leave an ounce of yourself up on that stage. You give it your all. And I'd say, yes, sir. And he's like, no, I'm serious, you know, give it everything you got. And so I said, now, son, I'm going to tell you the same thing. And so I told him that. And I said, now, I believe in you, but really that doesn't matter. This is that moment in life that you have to prove to yourself that you can do this.
Yeah.
You know? And so, you know, as much as an 8-year-old can kind of conceptually like take that all in, he was kind of still like, you know, in his mind, he was probably like, that's great, Dad, but this sucks. I don't want to do, you know?
He's like, geez, now I'm even more confused.
Yeah, right. He's like, wait, what? So basically he then goes up and the music teacher's like, okay. And she kind of like corrals all these kids of various ages, as young as like, you know, 6 or 7 and as old as like middle school, and kind of gets them to the front of the auditorium or whatever. And so like at this point it's like, whoop, too late. Now he's got to do this. He doesn't have a choice, you know?
Right.
And so he gets up there, man. And then whenever it's his turn, I'm like so nervous because I honestly, for a second, thought he's just going to run out of this room and I'm just going to be like, huh? But he gets up there. You can tell he's just like kind of nervous. He gets up to the piano, like stool or whatever. He's like positioning his hands. And for a second there, dude, I thought, this kid is not going to sit down. He's going to play standing up like Jerry Lee Lewis style or something. I don't know, and then he sits down calmly and then he plays this piece that they had to memorize, he had to everybody had to memorize their songs and he just crushed it, dude. And then he gets down and he gets all, and you can just tell, well, after he was just like, oh my gosh, man, I'm so glad I did that,
It was a rush.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, I can't wait to do it again. And, all that stuff. And so it was just so cool, man. But it's also hard, right? As a dad and a parent, it's like you want to protect your kids from everything that's going to make them either hurt or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But having to like allow them to like get up there and figure it all out and experience that feeling for themselves so that they know that they can do it was just like crazy. And your boy got teary-eyed when he saw his son up there. But what you probably didn't know, and what the listener definitely wouldn't know, is that I actually got teary-eyed with every kid. not even my own, dude. I was like I was just emotional, man. These kids would go up and they would sing a song or whatever, and I would just be like,
they'd be just so nervous.
Awesome. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It was really, really cool.
Man, that's awesome, dude.
Super, super proud.
Now, how long has he been playing?
He's been taking lessons for about a year, like almost a year, really, kind of every week.
Because man, I feel like I'm really just failing because most of my adult life I've been like a professional guitar player, and then I haven't taught either of my girls anything on guitar. So.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, I don't know. The thing about guitar specifically is like, yeah, you can get them like the little tiny guitars, but it's like, I think until they have that like drive to do it, I mean, in certain scenarios, yes, you kind of have to force them, but with guitar specifically, dude, you got to wait until their arms are big enough to get around it, Otherwise, I feel like it's just kind of a waste.
Well, but then you look at those like little Japanese or Korean kids that are just like 3 years old and they're just shredding up there.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, how many of those shredders ended up being in like, I don't know. Wait, like you're about to make me. No. I'm talking about like most of I think there's a big difference between being creative and being someone that just like robotically shreds the guitar. None of those folks that I know of end up being in like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I are very different in the sense that like just because that's been who we are for so long, is like we value being like band guys or being like a part of like a band over these sort of, this is gonna sound bad, but like cheesy like solo guys. Mm-hmm. It's like it's cool if you're just
Slash.
Well, but I mean, at least he was in Guns N' Roses. But like Mateus Asato, that guy that I send you videos all the time on Instagram, and they're just like those sort of, it's just them, and they're just playing, and it's like that's super cool. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, I would much rather have like
the
a
full
band
deal.
that's,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's all contributing and like putting in their own like thing to make it a much bigger than themselves,
Yeah.
So speaking of music, I kind of want to go into a little thing. One of our friends and family and fans and listeners, I never really know what to call them, our people. Julie, I happened to see on her story where something along the lines of her saying, my favorite part of the day is taking my kids to school, and like talking about her daughter, like having a favorite song. And that is like one of my all-time favorite things to do. I take the kids to school every day, and it's just cool to see like how they kind of change like what like their favorite songs and stuff. So like for me, I'm always trying to like get Amelia, especially, she's 6, and I'm always trying to like get her hooked on like a song. And I'll tell you the song that has lasted the longest without any of them getting exhausted about it, and a song that really has made me kind of look at it a different way, of instead of being cheesy to maybe being like one of the best songs ever written, is a a song called Teenage Dirtbag by a band called Wheatus.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby.
Man, what a great song.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude. I love taking the kids to school. Well, right now, I take our oldest to his school, and my wife takes our daughter to her school. So when he and I are driving to his school, man, we're jamming to all kinds of stuff, whether he likes to or not. You know, it's still that time of day when, I mean, it's like 7:30 in the morning. So some days he's like energized. Some days he's like, Dad, can we just turn it down? And lately we've been jamming to a whole lot of Weezer, actually.
Oh yeah.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
He's always kind of liked Weezer. It is funny though, like you said, the evolution, right? And so when he was like, man, I don't know, 1 or 2, maybe 2, he somehow heard that Taylor Swift song "Shake It Off" and was obsessed, dude.
Oh,
he
nice.
was obsessed.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the evolution, you know, they like, my kids love, we always jammed like Queen and Phoenix and Weezer.
One thing too about Amelia that I mean, even from like a really early age, she's really been obsessed with, like she knew who John Williams was like at like 3 or 4, and like by name. So she's always loved those scores. She really likes like the How to Train Your Dragon score, which is really cool, and it has stuff from Yonzi, the singer from Sigur Rós on there. So yeah, there's some pretty good stuff on there.
Yeah, man. Woodrow, same thing. Like, he's always been obsessed with John Williams and diving into like, and we've talked about it on the show before, like John Williams, his catalog, man, of just iconic themes and scores in the movies that just meant so much to us growing up. Like, I mean, it's just so many. Everything from, of course, Star Wars. But like Superman the movie and Indiana Jones and E.T. and like all these movies. I mean, and then going into like Harry Potter and like it's just in Home Alone and like in some of them you can kind of hear similarities and stuff. But
oh, there's definitely he definitely has like a vibe, you know.
It's just amazing.
But it's cool because the second you hear it, you're like, yeah, that's John Williams.
Actually, sometimes on the way to school, I find that perfect spot on the E.T. soundtrack. You know, right when Elliot and E.T. take off on the bike. You know, that boom, 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 and we just crank it super loud. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
And I do this thing too as we pull into like the drop-off line. I'm like, you know, it's already kind of loud, and his thing is like turn off the music whenever they open the door to get me out because he just gets, like I said, he gets embarrassed.
Yeah,
and so
dude,
like
Amelia gets the same way. She's like, just turn it down,
turn it off all the way down. And so like as we're getting closer, he's like, hey Dad, turn it off. And then I just like yell into the backseat. I'm like, what? Oh, turn it up. Gotcha. And I just like crank it even more. He's like, Dad, he's freaking out. I'm like, louder. Got it. And it's just like blaring. And then I just like press pause right as they open the door, and he's just like. He's just freaking out, awesome. Man. It's well, basically, I'm just like torturing the kid before he gets out of my.
It's like, well, that's only gonna get worse.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
He gets older,
dude. You know what other songs I've kind of been listening to?
I'm so glad we're getting into this.
Do you remember the song by the band Radish, "Little Pink Stars"?
Little pink star.
No, but a song on my list is from Hum. Called Stars.
Nice, man. A little synchronicity there.
Yeah, I saw them at Lollapalooza in 1999.
Yeah, it's like Ben Queller's band before he just broke off and went solo.
Yep.
And then a bunch of like...
What was that album called? Wasn't it called like something like Bolt or something? Restraining Bolt. I knew I was right. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I saw that.
That's probably the reason why I bought that CD. Because this was like back in the day when it's just like... You just would look at the titles of songs and album titles and just be like, And because they said Restraining Bolt, I'm like, this guy's a fan of Star Wars. I'm grabbing the CD.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, a couple songs of note. I kind of recently got back into Annie DeFranco, which is like, did you ever get into her?
I mean, a little, yeah. I mean, not a ton.
I mean, it was definitely like riot girl, folk punk kind of thing. But like she was really big. Like she was on the cover of like Rolling Stone and Spin and stuff. But she has an album called Tiny Plastic Castle, which I really liked. But the kids like some of the stuff from her. A band called That Dog. Do you remember them?
Oh, heck yeah, man.
Really?
Oh, yeah, dude.
Man.
I was blind as a bat and still knew.
I know. It's funny that we never, well, I'm sure we talked about them at some point, but yeah, dude, That Dog was amazing. They actually opened up for Blur when I saw them in Atlanta. A funny story. Like, my dad took my brother and I to that concert. It was at the Fox, I think.
Such a great venue.
It is. And it was cool, too, because, my dad, like, literally, I don't know if there's any other human being that could fall asleep during a rock concert, but my dad, like Homer Simpson's, like the grandpa or whatever, my dad was like dead asleep. Me and my brother just loving this show because it was like around the time that
like song 2 era?
Yeah, like around that late sort of like 90s, and it was just amazing to see them live. And then of course like that kind of full circle back to giving my dad a call before I went on stage, calling him the night that we played. No, it wasn't the Fox, dude. It was the Roxy.
Oh, yeah.
The night that we played the Roxy and was sold out.
Sold out the Roxy.
And, man, that was a cool sort of full circle to, and I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm about to go on stage at the place that you fell asleep. So, pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, I love That Dog, man. I haven't even thought about them in forever. If I remember right, they kind of had like I think I had the hots for like the singer.
I think there's maybe a few girls in the band.
Yeah.
What's interesting, it's funny that we're talking about this because them, Radish, and then another band on my list that nobody has ever heard
Come
about.
on, hit me with it.
A band called Orbit.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah, they what do you mean nobody has heard of them?
Well,
They did.
I'm not talking about Orbit like the electronica band. And I think the only reason you probably heard of them is because like I've secretly raved about them for years. But like they have a song called Medicine that is just.
She's a car broken down out on the highway. She's a good little girl, but her daddy
I don't know, something about it just feels so like 90s, early 2000s. But yeah.
Yeah, maybe I think you're right. I think the only reason I know about them is because I feel like I've had that conversation before with you. I'm like,
right.
Yeah, man, they covered Blue Monday. And you're like, no, not that, Orbit.
Not that one. A couple other bands, They Might Be Giants, Birdhouse in Your Soul.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
looking at her in the eye by the light switch. Who watches over you? Make a little birdhouse.
It's a good one.
Pretty weird band. It took me a while to kind of. I mean, I've always loved that song, "Birdhouse in Your Soul," just because it's so kind of like quirky and cool. But some of their other stuff's a little interesting, I guess, if you will. But I used to listen to this podcast called the Grizzly Bear Egg Cafe podcast, and they basically do exactly what we're doing now. It was around forever, and just two best friends just kind of talking, and they were obsessed with They Might Be Giants. So it kind of made me take a closer look at them. A couple other bands, Joanna Newsom, a song called Sadie. One of my all-time favorite songs of the early 2000s, Primitive Radio Gods.
Oh, yeah, man.
Standing outside a phone booth with money in my hand.
Yep.
Is like, I may play that song at my funeral. Dr. Dog, a song called Vampire.
Yes.
It's really cool. And then lastly, and usually I'm not into these bands that like cover other songs. Like, there's a lot of these bands that like, what's the band called? There's a band with like 4 cello players called Apocalyptica, where they play
Make Metallica
they just do,
and stuff.
Yeah, they do like Metallica and like Megadeth covers and stuff, and it's all on cello, which I mean is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it really does. But this band is called Brass Against, and it's like it's just this huge brass band. And I'll have to send this song to you. But they cover this song called "The Pot," which is a Tool song, which I know that you're not typically a big fan of. But it's really cool to hear, and like it's still like equally as heavy.
Dude, right when you
Just
said
like in a-
Tool, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Right when you said Tool, it reminded me of, and you're gonna have to help me out with this. And I feel like everything that we do, I feel like, I think we might have already talked about this. So forgive me, listener, if you've already heard us in this discussion, but it could have just been a phone call that we had. Dude, what is the video where it has that girl bass player and there's like this part where she's just like,
Oh, dude.
a quick break, she like ties up her hair in a bun and then just starts rocking out again? My gosh, the hottest thing I've ever seen.
Coolest video of all time, but within the context. Okay, so here's it. Let me like.
It's not Tool, right? It's
no, but close.
Okay.
So I was a fan of Tool forever. I was a fan of like a lot of heavy stuff. While Woody was like
Britpop.
into like Oasis and like Britpop and stuff. Long before Woody and I knew each other, I was into, like Tool and a bunch of metal stuff and like some new metal stuff like Taproot and Glassjaw.
Good God Almighty.
And
well, Glassjaw, like, I mean, God, some of these
know that
names, dude, is now
you hate all
No,
that stuff.
I
Yeah.
don't hate it. I just never really listened to it back in the day. Go ahead.
Yeah. So huge fan of Tool for the longest time. They kind of went on hiatus. Apparently there were all these rumors, I was like obsessed with like Guitar World magazine, all these like guitar magazines. I would get them every month from the grocery store. Well, I would actually steal them when I worked at Ingles. But Tool kind of went on hiatus. Maynard James Keenan, the lead singer of Tool, had kind of like cryptically kind of put out some stuff of like, I may be working on another project, and you kind of thought that it was Tool. Well, all of a sudden this video comes out. Also keep in mind, Maynard James Keenan, the singer for Tool, he's always been bald. And so this video comes out by a band called A Perfect Circle, and the song is called Judith. And it is the most badass song ever. And the video is like so cryptic. It never really shows like directly on like anyone's face. And it was kind of like a super group of like a, sort of like a bunch of like Josh Freese, a guy named Billy Howardell, who had done a bunch of stuff, done a ton of producing and stuff. I think later, James Eha from the Smashing Pumpkins was in there. Paz Linchanton, I know I'm saying that wrong, but she was the one that you're talking about, where like there's this like break in the song and her hair's down, and it's kind of like this like, I don't know, like post verse sort of like breakdown where they're just kind of ringing out and the guitar player's doing this little ostinato thing, and she does this like so fast where she like reaches over and you see her like grab like a hair tie like off of like the top of her amp, and she like does this thing where she like puts her hair up like in a bun and then like comes right back into like playing when the verse kicks back in.
Like I'm not even joking right now. I have like full body chills just
Me too.
thinking about that scene. And it's funny,
so
like
sexy,
just
and
like
you don't even know what she looks like.
Yeah, I mean, just like what you were talking about, given the context of like you were into like metal and stuff. And I mean, I liked some stuff, like I would listen to like White Zombie or Metallica. But like for the most part, yes, I was like super into Britpop. So like Oasis, Blur, Kula Shaker, Space Hog, Radiohead, all these kind of bands. I remember seeing this video and not really knowing like, what's what and what's going on here. But the way it was done, visually, it's just super intriguing. And then I remember seeing that scene and just being like, holy crap, who is this? And it's just like, yes, it's super, super hot, but also it's just so badass, man. Like,
Super badass.
It's just awesome. It's like this, really, it's just like the second you said Tool, I was like, oh yeah, wasn't there some sort of boom? So A Perfect Circle. Yeah, now I'm gonna have to go watch that video.
Yeah, the record is called Mare de Noms, which is also cryptic. It's Latin for Sea of Names, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they were all like members of like other groups. So it really was kind of like a super group. And then Maynard has this like long, like, long hair, like this wig on. So even though you're like, that's gotta be Maynard, because he has such a distinctive voice that like, it's like, that's gotta be him. But then you see like the long hair and it's like, what is going on? Who is this? But yeah, dude, it's amazing. And if you grew up in that sort of era like we did, man, it was just super, super cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So what else you got, man?
Is there a pattern forming here?
Oh, don't worry about it. I got it.
Tell me, what is it?
I don't understand why you're picking on me, Max. I mean, I listed a lot of...
Because you lost my f***ing carpet cleaning van, and I don't like you, you sucker.
Oh, God. What a perfect time to go into a break.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
America's future can be determined by our dreams and our visions.
It was very intense, bright light.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of giant man-like creatures.
From another dimension, another world, I don't know.
The most intriguing mystery on the North American continent.
You're listening to That Would Be Rad.
God, these allergies, man. You got allergies today?
No, but I felt really weird yesterday, man. Like I was more tired than normal around like 8:30 and stuff. I just felt crappy. So I went to bed. Well, I went and laid in bed around like 9:30 and was just reading the newest book that I'm reading, which, by the way, dude, I know I've mentioned this before on the show that I had been reading the Dragonlance Chronicles, which, you know, it's a trilogy of books written by a lady named Margaret Weiss and then a guy named Tracy Hickman. Dude, I finally finished them. And
she wrote A Fast Car. Tracy Chapman.
Jesus.
Continue.
No, Tracy Hickman. It's a dude. I finally finished them, dude, and they are amazing. Now, within like the Dungeons and Dragons sort of like fandom, I'll say, there's like an age-old sort of which is better sort of rivalry between the Dragonlance sort of world and books and stuff like that, and the Forgotten Realms, which is kind of what a lot of the modules and stuff are today. Although they came out only a few years apart, which is interesting. And so what people often ask is, well, which one do you like better? You know, the Drizzt stuff, which happens in the Forgotten Realms, or this stuff in the Dragonlance Chronicles? And the answer is, I like them both equally for different reasons. And what's interesting, man, is like, even though they're both like, okay, they're official sort of Dungeons and Dragons book series and stuff, they take place in two separate settings within the D&D universe. And the history behind them is actually kind of cool, man. I think even if you're not into Dungeons and Dragons, when you hear the name Dungeons and Dragons in those early modules, you probably think, oh, I mean, I don't know. Like if someone was to ask you, like, what's Dungeons and Dragons? You know, obviously you would say, well, it's some kind of game, blah, 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 blah. But you would think that, oh, well, it's just like you go on these adventures, you fight dragons. But the truth is, like, early on, you know, at first, there weren't really, like, dragons weren't built into the game. There weren't, the game mechanics and stuff, like, weren't really practical. And so it was super, super rare for that to be, like, a thing. And so, like, in the early 80s, this guy, Tracy Hickman, he had just got brought on as, like, a staff writer. He had kind of contributed a little bit in Dragon Magazine, and he had, you know, made some modules for TSR, who owned Dungeons and Dragons at the time. And he was kind of, like, driving around with his wife one day, and they sort of just, like, built this sort of world where dragons were just, like, dominating, and thought of like this concept of basically making a multimedia like package kind of for this. So not only like it all started with like there are going to be these modules, which basically for anybody listening that isn't really familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, they're like these pre-made adventures. And it was going to be those pre-made adventures, novels, merchandise, miniatures, all this kind of stuff, which hadn't really been done by these guys yet. And so it was kind of like, whoa, you know, kind of like revolutionary for them. And what's cool is when the first modules came out for Dragonlance, you could actually play these pre-generated characters who were referred to as like the heroes of the lance or whatever. And so like all these characters, and then later that year, they released the first novel where these dang characters are in, dude. And so then you're like getting all this context to who these characters are. And then you come back to your game and be like, oh man, I want to be this guy or I want to be that girl. And, you know, it's just incredible. And so like the first book is called Dragons of Autumn Twilight, and it came out in 1984. And so Dragonlance is set in this world called Kryn. And the Dragonlance itself it's actually a weapon that was designed with the sole purpose of killing evil dragons.
Oh, that's cool.
And so this novel starts off, man, taking place when sort of it's many, many, many years since the last sort of like evil dragon was killed. And it was like this big deal and all this. But it's been so long that basically people have kind of started to like not believe that they were real. I mean, kind of like in Game of Thrones, you know, people are like, I mean, dragons, they're not real. They don't come around anymore. There's no, you know what I mean? There's that mix of like, it's been too long. People just have kind of lost belief. They've lost belief in like the gods of the world and all this kind of stuff. And so the Dragonlance itself is the weapon that was created.
Kind of like us now.
Well, yeah, man. And it's like
we have iPhones.
We're good. We don't believe in Bigfoot.
Who needs
these weapons were created like using magic and like old like artifacts, and it's just really, really cool to, I don't know, be like dropped into this world and then to know that like you could then go and play as these characters in these pre-made modules in that area. And the thing about these books, you know, I think on the surface, like people, you know, they'll even look at like the covers and they'll even think like, I mean, fantasy novels, like that just sounds like the worst, you know? But the thing is, it's interesting because like the characters themselves are like super intriguing. They have a lot of depth. Within these books, there's like literally anything you'd be looking for, you got it here. There is action, there's love stories, there's tragedy, there's crazy monsters, there's mystery, and of course magic and dragons. But there's really cool sort of like, in a way, social commentary when it comes to like, you know, people of like different races or like half races. I mean, one of the main characters, his name is Tanis Half Elven, and he's half human, half elf, because like his elf mother was raped by like a human soldier or whatever. And so anyway, like he is a bastard basically, and he is just one of the most incredible like characters I've ever read, man. Like this incredible like hero, incredible leader. It's just awesome, man. So like I am gonna let you borrow these because you need to read them, man. I mean, just listen to these characters, okay? Like here's what's another cool thing. Before the book even starts, the very first page, you open the front cover, the very first page has basically like a list of the main characters and like little mini descriptions. And like at the very top, it says an unlikely group of heroes. And then it names them and gives them descriptions like Tanis, half elven, leader of the companions, a skilled fighter who detests fighting. He is tormented by love for two women, the tempestuous swordswoman Kitiara and the enchanting elf maiden Lorana.
Man, love it already.
Yeah, no, dude. Sturm Brightblade, Knight of Solamnia. Once revered in the days before the cataclysm, the knights have since fallen to disgrace. Sturm's goal, more important to him than life itself, is to restore the honor of the knighthood. Then there's Goldmoon. She's a chieftain's daughter, bearer of the blue crystal staff. Her love for a tribal outcast, Riverwind, leads them both on a dangerous quest in search of the truth.
Man, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, dude. Riverwind, grandson of Wanderer. Given the blue crystal staff in a city where death flew on black wings, he barely escaped with his life, and that was only the beginning. Rastlin, Karamon's twin brother. He's a magic user. Though his health is shattered, Rastlin possesses great powers beyond his young age, but dark mysteries are concealed behind his strange eyes.
So basically, what's his name on Game of Thrones?
Bran,
yeah.
Kind of, but even more like the whole time, and especially in this first book, you're like, is this guy a bad guy? Is he a good guy? I don't really know. He's got these weird like hourglass-shaped pupils. And and then Caramon, Rastlin's twin brother, is a warrior, a genial giant of a man. Caramon is the exact opposite of his twin. Rastlin is the one person he cares for and the one person he fears. Flint Fireforge, dwarf fighter, Tanis' oldest friend. The ancient dwarf regards these youngsters as his, quote, children. Then there's Tasselhoff Burfoot. He's a Kinder, which basically is this book's version of, or this series version of Hobbit. And Kinder, the nuisance race of Kryn, are immune to fear, and consequently trouble seems to follow them home. So it says...
Did it just have the nuisance race?
Yeah. They're basically like always like stealing things or like, just kind of annoying little like hobbits, basically. And
now, I wonder if this was like before they created halflings. Because they couldn't use hobbit because,
Yeah, I'm not sure because they are a little bit different, actually. They have like different culture and stuff. Like they have like a kind of a silly looking like top knot on their head, like a long hair and stuff. And so it is different technically than like your typical halfling that appears in like the Forgotten Realms and stuff. But the cool, like right after that, it says the 8 are given the power to save the world, but first they must learn to understand themselves and each other. Man, so cool, awesome. Dude.
What a huge like party too. That's
and that's really only that's not even all of them really. You meet other characters that come along and it's just like, man, I'm telling you, dude, it is.
Man, I mean, are you heading down to let me borrow that book today?
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Man, speaking of all of the D&D stuff, we had our very first, I guess technically session 0 and session 1 of our new campaign this past weekend, and man,
dude,
unbelievable. I'm back on the wagon.
Yeah, man. It was incredible. Now we added a couple of players to the group.
Yep.
Some other buddies of ours who joined kind of like the original group. And you guys would remember them on our episode Knights of the Rad Table, where we introduced you to Luke, who is one of the other players, and then Ellis, who is the dungeon master.
Yeah.
So we added a guy named Brad and our friend Johnny to the group. And the best part is like none of us knew really what each other's characters were going to be or look like or, kind of specialize in or, what in Dungeons & Dragons terms, what class they were going to be in or what race of creature. And so as we kind of were introduced to each other in the game, which I also thought was brilliantly sort of laid out, it was just amazing, man. We've got this. So Brad is playing this turtle, which is essentially like a humanoid turtle. I mean, think of it as like the best way to kind of envision it is like Ninja Turtle.
A Jose Canseco bat? Tell me, you didn't pay money for this.
Right. Literally, that's exactly.
But like a little bit more like elemental looking. And his
you know what it looks like? It actually looks just like, and again, boy, we're off the rails for people who aren't into our sort of culture here.
Yeah,
but who was the bad turtle? You remember the toy? He was like sort of like a turquoise color, and he looked a lot more like sort of turtle-ish, I guess. He kind of looked like his head was more like a snapping turtle.
Yeah.
What was that guy called from the Ninja Turtles?
I can't remember if it was like Toka or Razor.
Should we look this up real quick?
I think it's Toka.
Hold on. We don't want to look like idiots.
We're not, man. I remember. I'm going to look not like an idiot.
Well, you're going to cut all this stuff. Oh, Toka and Razor.
I'm going to keep it when you say you are right.
Razar.
No, that was the wolf dude.
They came out together?
Mm-hmm. In Ninja Turtles 2, I think.
Oh, what? Wait a minute. I'm not talking about that one, though.
Doesn't really matter. Anyway.
But am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?
The character itself, though, is hilarious because, again, having not really been or played with Brad or Johnny before, it was not just like that we were being introduced to new characters, but introduced to like how they were playing this character that they created. And like this turtle, man, was hilarious. Like we start out where we're, I don't want to dive too deep into this, but essentially like, you imagine like a group of heroes, someone in a town is saying like, hey, we this little girl went missing. Do you guys want to like go and look for her? We can't give you much, but here's some gold, kind of thing. And, truly we could say, well, no, we don't really want to. Or yes, we would, based on like how we think our character would react to that. Well, since the majority of us are hero looking for adventure kind of characters, we're like, yeah, absolutely. And this turtle basically says like, now hold on a second, we can't just go looking for every single little girl that disappears all the time, And it was just so funny, man. It was just such a different like take that I'm like, yes, this is going to be great. And then Johnny's character is kind of this mysterious sort of wizard that is very
sorcerer,
sorcerer that's very even keeled and like
which is
taking
awesome.
it all in, and it's just, oh man, it's just so good. It's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I've got to say, and it's funny because like, so when Woody and then our friend Luke and myself first played, we played like a 4-shot, which ended up being like a 5-6 shot or whatever. No, it originally was supposed to be a 3-shot, and that was kind of just to sort of teach us sort of the game mechanics and how to play and all that. It was such a different kind of sort of different way of playing, I think, because we were so new. And especially me was like super cautious. Hey, let's like, leave no stone unturned. Let's like check out everything. Let's like make sure everything's okay before we open the door. And it's so refreshing now with this like new like little cast of characters, especially Brad, who I'd never met before. And he's awesome. Brad, you're a good dude. You're awesome. And I'm super psyched to play with you. And having Johnny in there. But it's funny having Brad in there, being this sort of this rogue turtle, which is kind of a contradiction anyway. You think of a rogue being like this super skinny, like lanky,
like really
acrobat.
Easy to hide and sneak around, light on their
real
feet,
sort of wispy, and then he's like this turtle, which is like this huge kind of ninja turtle with a giant shell on his back. But man, he's just so funny in the sense of just pushing the envelope. There's no sort of like caution, and there's no sort of like, well, I don't know if we should do this. He's like, well, I think I'm going to try to steal this. Like,
yeah, right.
Right off the bat. And it's funny because of him, it's like, I'm over here like, yeah, dude, I'm your cheerleader.
Yeah.
Steal away. Let's see what happens.
Oh, man.
So it's really, really cool, man.
Yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that character is going to get us into some serious hot water here and there throughout this game.
Yeah, I'm super excited too about Johnny's. I love like the way Johnny plays too. He's very like, just pretty badass. Like, kind of just soaking it all in, like the surroundings, not like really kind of quiet at all times, and kind of like, but then these like little moves that he does are just, they're just kind of genius.
Cool. Yeah, man. That's the thing that I think folks that maybe haven't played or have no interest in playing, it's kind of hard to kind of imagine. Essentially the best way to kind of describe it is like if you could create your own video game character, like how would they be, and then how would they react to certain like scenarios and things presented to them. And it's just neat to see, we put so much time into our own characters and creating their backstories and like all this like lore surrounding them that once we're introduced to like other characters, it's just really fascinating to see how the new guys kind of came in and thankfully sort of had prepared equally as much as we did. And it's just so different. It's not like a bunch of us are all just like the same. We're all like, yeah, let's go beat this monster. Like we're all doing it with different strategy and all for like the same purpose and the same goal and stuff, which is really, really cool. And like kind of dropping little hints here and there so that we can begin to sort of understand and learn more about those characters without just, in a more realistic way, without just being like, all right, man, where are you from? What happened? Why are you this way? Why are you on this quest? We're kind of slowly trickling that information in. And so like, that's another part of it that's just super, super fun and intriguing, is trying to kind of get that information from those characters that you're surrounded by to get the full sort of like picture of who this person is and why they happen to end up being right there. And it's much different than our first game. Our first game, being introduced to this, I think Ellis did an outstanding job kind of creating a scenario where all of our characters, we start having already known each other, right?
Right.
And so we have this shared background of adventuring together, and then this game kind of starts 20 years later, and so our characters from the previous game are now legend.
Yeah,
and
which is so smart. Like,
yeah,
such a
dude,
cool
it's
way
going to
to
be
do
so cool to see how that kind of ties in, because that it will in some way. But the way all of our characters kind of came together. It's relatively classic D&D where, a couple of us were in like, this tavern or whatever. And
Oh yeah, that's like I think that's like the most classic sort of.
But he also like mixed in this like dream sequence that Johnny's character was having, and like just
that was
all kinds of crazy stuff, man. It was just so much fun.
Well, and one thing too that I really like about this new campaign is, even though we did start out as like a the classic, like, oh, we all just meet up in this pub basically, and we're all having drinks and getting to know each other, and I'm from here and I'm from here, and whatever. It's cool because a lot of us didn't know what each other were going to be as far as like class and backstory. So it ends up kind of being this like, we all sort of gravitate to this table together because we're also different. So, you have like a dwarf, you have me who's like half drow, so I'm kind of this bluish gray elf with silver hair. You have Luke's character. What was Luke's character?
He was a
Argon
dragonborn, so he's like he is
dragonborn,
like sort of like a dragon humanoid.
Yeah, this like 7 foot tall. And he was like red, I think. 7 foot tall red dragonborn with like these sort of like dreadlock like tendrils coming out. Then you had this giant sort of turtle rogue, and then Johnny's just like a human like sorcerer. So it's like this straight up island of misfit toys kind of vibe. And, instead of like just meeting up, it ends up being like all of a sudden everybody starts looking at us kind of like it would be in a small town with like sort of prejudice and like, and then, then like a battle sort of erupts. And it was a great like getting to know you kind of, setup, but also kind of getting right into like a little skirmish. So the new guys could kind of see like the sort of battle mechanics and
the way that it was presented too. If you think about it now, kind of thinking about it, it's like it was a very cool way to kind of control that. Even though like as a player you can do limitless things, right? It was a cool way to kind of make that happen. As Ellis kind of almost forced it to happen by like explaining to us there were no other seats in the tavern. It was just jam-packed. There's a couple empty seats, and I thought that was really cool. And then like essentially what started this like fight was this like, I don't know, ogre dude comes up and says like, hey, these are our seats. Y'all need to leave. And we could have very easily just been like, all right, cool. We were on our way anyway. But instead we were like, my character just starts laughing. But and so, kicked it off with a nice fight.
Yeah,
So,
really, really cool.
I don't know, especially if people aren't interested in Dungeons and Dragons, how much longer they want to hear us talk about it. So I think this is probably a pretty good spot to
take a break and then come right back talking about more D&D.
to kind of wrap it up. And oh man, hold on. I was thinking about Albert Ostman this morning. What did I think about? Oh, no. I remember what I thought about now. I thought about Albert Ostman this morning, thinking about last week's episode, and like, I don't even, was it like 4 pounds of prunes? I mean,
Well, he had like 5 cans of beans, 4 pounds of prunes.
I mean, maybe the Bigfoot family was like wanting, like, hey, look, all we've been eating is this like sweet root grass. Yeah. Our stomachs aren't doing well. This guy's got 4 pounds of prunes. He looks like he knows what he's doing. Let's take him along and maybe he can help us out. I don't know.
We need some fiber.
Look, we say it every single week, and we're never going to stop doing it. We really appreciate you, the listener, taking the time out of your busy life to listen to our show and interact with us. Not only does it make our day, but it also just really kind of solidifies our reason for doing this podcast. Right. We've met people from literally all around the world. I mean, we've got listeners in so many different countries all across the globe. And just to hear, for example, that, one listener from Tasmania is talking to us about like cool creatures and stuff that exist on that side of the world. And it's just incredible dialogue that we get to have with you folks. And literally, we couldn't be more appreciative than we are. It just means the world to us. Now, Tyler, where is the best place for people to interact with us?
Well, most of the time we're over on Instagram, so feel free to hit us up there. You can shoot us DMs. Feel free to comment. There's always like a lot of good back and forth. Like what he said, if you have a spooky story or an encounter, feel free to send us a more long form accounts or stories, I guess, over to our email at thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. We kind of started this podcast. We understand that it's a pretty broad podcast. We talk about paranormal one week, D&D the next, the Ewoks the next week, toys from the 80s one week. And so we understand that it's pretty broad and it's hard to kind of put your finger on like what we're all about, but it just so happens we love all that stuff equally. And we knew when we created the podcast that surely there's more people out there that are like us, that have that same kind of 80s nostalgia and love for these things. Not all of them, but maybe one or two here and there. And so, we're so happy and we're so, it really kind of makes us feel fulfilled for what we're doing when you guys do hit us up or give us suggestions of, hey, you guys should cover this, or hey, have you heard about this? That's just really, really cool to us, and it really means a lot. So, we love you, we appreciate you, and as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes. The way it You're my favorite song on the radio that's only playing sad songs. Well, even sad songs have to come to an end. And you always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but I guess it died even before it began. And that's the way it goes. The way it goes. The way it goes. The way it You were all black clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead before you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.